Why is the solar industry performing so poorly? Year to date, the Invesco Solar ETF TAN has returned 13.1. Over the same period, the SP 500 has returned 17.1 and global equities, to be less US-centric, have returned 13.5, using VT as a proxy. Why has the solar industry performed so abysmally? There was clearly a clean energy bubble coinciding with a growth stock bubble peaking around 2021, followed by a substantial correction for both. I know rising rates haven't helped either, since a lot of solar companies have future cash flows now heavily discounted. But while growth stocks in general have recovered marginally from their lows, VUG's 33.8 YTD, solar stocks are hovering around 3-year lows. Why is the solar industry's performance exceptionally bad? The whole process of solar involves borrowing money. The companies are high PE and have to borrow. Customers typically borrow to install, then get paid back later. Times of high interest kills solar. This week TAN lost 8 of that 13, so it has been mostly just below break-even for the year till this week. TAN has a solid recent history of performing, still in the top 10 ETFs for the past 5 years, but it should do fairly poorly the rest of this year and into next while interest rates are still sky high. The other issue is permission to operate, which comes from utilities companies. They are not incentivized to provide this soon. You are asking why industry with high capital debt, low margins, high competition, low moat is struggling in an era where capital is expensive? They should be even lower EMO. NEM 3.0 killed residential solar in the #1 market, California. Well, in my specific case, I run a holiday park, and we wanted to install a solar hot water system for my amenities block. Option 1 solar. $140K to install solar heating water tank storage. $70K to fix the roof so that I would be able to have solar system set up properly. Also had to have a gas system installed as a backup that would kick in when solar wasn't viable, couple days of rain, etc. Option 2 gas. $40K for a complete gas system. Their door-to-door rip-off salespeople probably are a bad business model. It's a tough business model. Wholesale grid electricity is still exceedingly cheap in a lot of places. Installing solar requires lots of space, complicated interconnection agreements, infrastructure, roof brackets, electrical upgrades, etc. It's not plug and play, and, especially on the residential side, you're not offsetting enough electricity to make it worthwhile. Not to mention, a hug part of the US doesn't have much sunshine to work with. Solar is great but comes with a lot of challenges that many advocates don't acknowledge. If the technology wasn't so high on the startup, I think more folks would be interested in getting started up with it. Interest rates are high and fossil fuel prices are low. Have they uttered the word AI yet during their earnings calls? In California, net metering 3.0 has completely killed my interest in solar, was close to pulling the trigger until I found out about it. Just quit my job working in this field. They don't produce exceptional amounts of power, comparably speaking. And they take up an exceptional amount of space land in order to produce any meaningful contribution to the grid. They're largely funded by carbon-intensive industries and their offshoot companies in order to receive carbon credits and fulfill their carbon-neutral mandate. The last field we built, I was told that if the site lasts only 5 years, then it's met its goal. Bottom line, it survives on government grant and subsidy. When it comes to hardware, panels manufacturing China is way cheaper. Solar is very expensive to purchase or even lease. With mortgage rates at record highs, what new homeowner is willing to add $40-50K in solar panel costs on top of the 8-9 mortgage they pay? Solar panels are a luxury good and are not best in class at anything. Because the reality is that solar is not cost-effective alternative energy to produce and relies heavily on government subsidy and cheap borrowing. I would much rather invest in nuclear if the attitude towards it changes, but I don't see that happening anytime soon either. It's all debt at first. Enphase had poor guidance last 2 quarters. Because switching to solar is slow and arduous and people are impatient. As someone who works in the industry, I've seen a lot of people employed who have no idea or experience in what they are doing. With an industry so new, this is to be expected, but I think prices can be a lot cheaper if companies focused on making their operations more efficient. Right now it's go 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 and expand as much as possible. I worked in the solar industry about 12 years ago, and had shares in a few panel manufacturers that got usurped by bigger ones and didn't really go anywhere. I was pretty close to buying shares in ENPH, but didn't. Stock would have been the 300 bagger. Why is FSLR not even mentioned by anyone in this thread? Because sector-specific ETFs usually contain a lot of junk. People set up these type of ETFs without looking at the companies involved at all. They just throw anything in there that sounds like solar. They know that some doofus will come and say I want to invest in solar but I don't want to put any effort in, and they can sell them this junk no questions asked. Solar required rare earth elements, but most rare earth now focusing on future car technology, such technology related. Extremely low profit margin, huge amount of competition, lots of debt etc. Renewable are great for buzzword like ESG, terrible as an investment. Solar isn't profitable unless it's subsidized by the government. Also, the Canadian wildfire smoke that was covering parts of the Northeast this summer probably didn't help much. Solar, like all energy producers, makes a bid as to how much energy it will provide. If it doesn't reach those numbers, it ends up paying the transmission entities the cost of replacement. In the Arizona desert it was barely break-even before they started raising interest rates. Nuclear is cheap, and the infrastructure is already built for it. Having to have the roof inspected, they weren't all built to support solar, and structurally upgraded to be able to support panels is not cheap. Nighttime. The ROI is far too high. Better to buy a jig if you have cash. Are we asking why an unprofitable venture isn't making lots of money? Are we that stupid? When the government has to subsidize something, red flag. When people are forced to buy something they don't want, the something isn't good on its own merits, another red flag. One business near us closed out their life insurance 100k, bought into solar panel scam, were promised credits at the end of the year with their output. Last month they were told that they won't receive credits, that their credits will be given to those in poverty. This business didn't take government subsidy. They cashed out their own insurance. Does it not cost more to manufacture a panel than the energy it will produce in its lifetime? Because govs are taking away incentives so less people install it. Simple. Solar is a terrible investment. Simple answer: the money is in the developers and most of them are not publicly listed. And on the other side, the ones who gain the most are actually the tax equity partners, typically a financial sponsor like a major bank. Also, TAN is a global ETF with lots of junk, and solar installation across the globe is somewhat abysmal. A lot of these solar companies were banking on future cash flows, but with the rates going up, not so much lol. The solar industry's got challenges from supply chain issues to competition from other renewable sources, and let's not forget the government policies. Because they were valued so high before and debt isn't free anymore. Cause the US says go die China. Rare earth metal skyrockets low margin. No solar companies are profitable ATM except the ones in China. GLHF. I was playing the wheel on TAN in my Roth for the past 2 years, but the liquidity dried up and I swapped over to just poor man's covered calls on SPY. Got really lucky before this last drawdown. I felt like solar was a no-lose scenario and still do, but the time frame is the problem and cost of capital. Lamau. But wouldn't this mean that this low prices be a great position entry? Inflation Reduction Act has lots of subsidies that will come to fruition within the next few years. Anecdotally, maybe because their salespeople are so fucking pushy and dishonest,